Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Chupacabra's Lair. I am, of course, your host, Larry the Chupacabra, and we are running back into the world of Ludum Dare 29 Showcase Awesomeness with another 5 awesome games. And just remember, if you haven't gotten involved with voting, there are still 3 days left before the final winners are decided in each category, and the overall winner is selected from. So be sure to get in there and play up a whole bunch of games to make sure that they get all of the coverage and playing that they deserve. And I plan to do this video and definitely 2 more. The final one, of course, being the finale showcase, where I take a look at some of the winning games and congratulate them on such awesome work. So let's just jump right on in here and get started. The first game up to be checked out today is Ants of War by Magic Spark, and as the name might suggest, this is a game where we must vie for dominance beneath the Earth's surface in a subterranean cavern with mythical overtones, and you play as an ant queen and you must spawn various larvae in order to fend off the invading fire ants, who are at your doorstep looking to murgle you and take over your ant-related insectium kingdom. The gameplay, then, as you might imagine, is something of an indirect sort of real-time strategy type game. You start in one corner of the map with your ant queen, busily spewing out small worker ants to go about doing her bidding, and on the opposite side of the map, more often than not, sometimes you can spawn a little bit closer together, is the enemy ant queen, who is a red fire ant, and she is looking to murgle you and take over your small insectoid kingdom. So you have to defend yourself from the invasion of swarming ants while also building up a strong enough force in order to kill her off as well. So your options are pretty simple here. You either can spawn some more small ants, which will be automatically generated periodically as you go along, but you can forcibly spawn them quicker. And then you can also spawn larger warrior ants, which will just absolutely murgle all of the smaller little ants coming to try and kill you, which is kind of convenient. And even though you cannot directly control any of these units, once they have been spawned, you are offered some options for creating traps and other sort of terrain modifications to put the environment to your advantage. These include things like little spider webs, which will kill off a singular ant placed strategically, along with little rocks to block off certain roundabout paths, or antlion pits. I would say that this is a pretty good set of tools for you to play around with, both making sure you have plenty of units to go about murdering the enemy queen, and also giving you some weapons to defend yourself. However, you can run into some difficulty later in the game using some of these traps, as your own ants' AIs are a little limited yet, and they tend to frolic quite merrily into your own set of traps to their imminent doom. Or when that trap has been sprung, yet some of its effects are still active, such as the antlion pit, you can end up with your entire army doing the Chattanooga Choo-Choo or some sort of line circle dance infinitely inside the trap until it eventually despawns so they can go about their merry way of murdering the enemy queen. Can be kind of difficult, and at times can even freeze the game a little bit. But otherwise, I think the game had a really nice aesthetic to it. The whole game is in a very nice mixture of what feels like very hyper-realistic grunge effects and some low-poly effects on some of the different graphics that really make it come alive and feel like you're really there with very real ants in some sort of growing subterranean kingdom. So that was a very nice job on that, and the music was very appropriate, so that creates a very lovely atmosphere with which to go about your insect-related wars. It might definitely be interesting later to see how they build it out and flesh it out, and maybe you can even build some, like, ant-related mutations. Because, I mean, there's a whole host of different ants within different species colonies that you could totally draw from without having to reach too far into the imagination to tweak. Especially given the plethora of really detailed environments that we already see, it might be really cool to see like a crystalline ant creature, or maybe a lava ant creature, or some sort of glowing infested fungal ant. I don't know. But otherwise, this was a really fun game. It's very relaxing, doesn't require too much fast-paced maneuvering. So very nice job, guys. Just sort of fix the tweakiness of the AI and maybe a couple of the freezes, and I think you guys got yourselves a great game. Next up, we have another sort of introspective piece called Introspectum by Solkar. And Introspectrum is an interesting game that sort of plays off of the notions of Sigmund Freud, sort of those subconscious things that drive all of our motivations in life, and building around puzzles based off of that. The game itself is functioning and sort of designed as if it's a pseudo type of game board, almost like Monopoly in a way, and you move along diagonally or across in order to reach signs that sort of give you clues as to the next piece in your journey. And I really dig the art style here because it sort of points to the fact in a lot of ways that psychoanalysts and analytics sort of talks about the inherent struggles and things that go on in your mind, and how, like, the game of life is sort of just that. It's this massive rat race that you're not really sure where you're going, and always seems like you're just sort of going along this weird little board game, and you're not really the one completely in control of whatever's going on in the world. And in order to sort of illustrate this, you have your main character, which is this lovely gentleman in the top hat, going around and speaking with different signs and characters, talking about, for example, I am the father, your will is my will, etc., etc. And I think that's a really strong concept. The only things that sort of bugged me is the controls were a little bit weird, like just sort of getting to simple places just kind of felt a little bit wonky. And perhaps I'm missing how the puzzle mechanic works in the game, but I wasn't able to get too far with the initial puzzle. I think I spent about an hour trying to just get past the initial phase of the game before I sort of moved on. But I definitely like the concept, and the art is very strong. Maybe throw in some hints or some sort of tutorial levels that give me an idea of what type of weird mind-bender puzzles I'm looking at, and I think we've got a great game here. And of course, like many other people have said, tweak those game controls just a little bit, maybe add some cursor controls. Sideways can be a little mind-bending, but I think people can get there. So, very nice job, Mr. Solkar. Keep up the good work. After Introspectrum, we have Tiny Haunt by Rojo. And I really like games like this, because it's an awful lot like the sort of mentality behind games like Dungeon Keeper or Dwellers, and your goal is you are the evil ghost that is inhabiting this dark and mysterious dungeon, and you don't want those nasty knights and paladins going all up in your business and touching your evil enchanted ghost loot and bling. So your job is to make them very dead, and in order to do that you have two sort of weapons at your disposal. You can sort of inhabit or, what's the word? Possess an object in order to use it as a weapon, or you can directly fling things around the room using sort of like a psionic blast of some variety. So, using these two tools, you have to fling these knights into all manner of spikes and boxes and traps that crush and maim and stab them, or you can grab an arrow here or a barrel there and fling them at your foe, provided they don't have a shield up in your path, and that will bonk them, conk them, or shiv them in the noggins and make them explode into a noxious cloud of purple gas. And this is a pretty nice, simple set of mechanics to play around with in a few levels. You can batter your enemy, provided they don't have a shield up to block you, with an arrow or a barrel, or just knocking over boxes that happen to be stacked nearby. And failing that, if you absolutely have to, you can always just use your psionic abilities to fling them into spike traps. I think the one thing that I feel is lacking in that sort of toolbox is a limit on your ability to simply fling knights around. Because on a great many levels, you can simply just use only your telekinetic sort of psionic ghosty powers to just fling the knights around until they eventually bash into some random stray object, which will enable you to kill them. And I think sort of having things like traps on the walls or other sort of very rigid mechanics that you have to work around would provide a much more specific and strategy-based challenge than simply flinging just the knights, or even just limiting how many times you can use that bursty psionic push might do the trick. Because I think using things like arrows that are discarded around the level or barrels are a great mechanic, and I had a lot of fun just trying to ricochet a barrel off the top of the dungeon in order to slam a knight in the head without having to shoot the barrel behind him first, because I felt that made me a lazy ghost and I wasn't living up to my haunting potential. But otherwise, it's very simple and straightforward, and I really enjoyed this. I played this several times, trying to use different combinations to kill the different knights, and if you can kill like 4 of them in a row with one ability, just one precisely timed thing, it's really satisfying, I gotta say. The art style is very simplistic and minimalist. Nothing to complain about there. It's very well done and implemented, and there's some good sound effects in the background that sort of bring this haunted little mansion-y dungeon to life. So very good job, and I hope you guys continue to refine this in the future. Following Tiny Haunt, we have The Sun and Moon by Manganor. Or Managor? Either way. So, Sun and Moon is a game that is sort of, a different take on jumping platformers, like Super Meat Boy or other sort of titles that have you jumping around avoiding spikes in a floating environment, in that Sun and Moon has you more thinking about how to go inside of the terrain itself. Your special little floating black marbly power is that you can dive below the surface of solid matter as if it was nothing more than water. And the sort of physics behind that is it behaves much like a buoyant object in water where you can dive under, but the buoyancy of the material will eventually force you back to the surface, so you have to be careful because there's spikes floating above you that want to shred you into 1,000 little black particles. So it provides an interesting mechanic, and playing around with the physics and the notions of diving through the terrain I found extremely enjoyable. And there's just something about just diving and swimming through solid mass that would otherwise block your path in other games was just really satisfying, especially when you were able to quickly, in the matter of just a simple couple seconds and a couple keystrokes, just chain together, gathering up all the objects. So your goal here is to progress through each level, gathering up the 3 little key orbules in order to activate the teleporter at the end of the levels. And in order to get these, you have to go through a variety of different puzzles, either changing how you mishmash through different solid terrain, or using the terrain as a means to avoid obstacles such as long deadly plummets, or, you know, rotating spike walls which will obliterate you into 1,000 little pieces. And sometimes you even have to go inside the solid objects themselves in order to get one of the orbs in order to progress further. At first, this seems like a very simple, almost too easy mechanic to work through, but I mean, just simple placements of just making the terrain just a little too thick because you can only dive so far with only so much momentum, and having that very thin margin placed next to some rotating spikes so you have a small window of opportunity to get past to the portal. It's very devious and very simple, yet it can cause you a lot of torment to try and get through that very specific part of the puzzle. And that's the sort of attention to detail that, as a gamer, I really appreciate. And there's just something that you know that they tried that level like 400 freaking times in order to just refine it just right so that it was hard, but not too hard. And then you've also got things like jumps that you can take in a couple of different ways. You can either just try and get a running start and leap off, or you can do like I do and do a little loop-de-loop off the back of the platform in order to propel yourself using the inherent buoyancy of the object in order to bridge a longer gap. And so I really enjoy this game. It's got a lot of nice things going on for it. It's got a very simple goal on each level, yet using different mechanics placed just so together or making the terrain just so thick really makes it a very highly refined game. mix in a very nice, simple, you know, minimalist art style with some good background stuff going on for sounds, and you've got a really awesome game. So very nice job, guys. Keep up the awesome work, and I hope you guys continue to refine this into a masterpiece. And so last but not least, we have a very spectacular game called Scuba Bear by Ryland. And this is a game that's got a really, just like right off the bat, you're just like, wow, this has got a really awesome sort of sprite-based artwork, very 8-bit, yet there's just a whole host of detail, just really, right off the bat, just kind of sucks you right in there. And so you are this magnificent explorer bear, and your goal is to go about the world gathering up treasure, and your hunt to fulfill some sort of, I don't know, Midas touch related wants or sense of adventure. So you have to go about your business fighting off crabs with your bear claws and gathering different scuba related equipment in order to delve the icy depths in order to find the most magnificent of retro gaming treasures like little bomber man creatures, the little flappy bird icon, and other such marvelous things, including a Pokeball. I mean, I wouldn't have imagined bears to be into Pokemon, but hey, go figure. And as with any platformer kind of needs, in order to keep your interest as you go along, the Scuba Bear game does a nice job of providing you with evenly spaced upgrades, despite the non-linear design of the game level. They do a nice job of sort of hinting at the fact that you're going to need a very specific item to reach a different area, so that you don't spend too much time wandering around waiting for something to happen. Like a ledge that's just a little bit too high, or, you know, a piece of water that's just a little too deep because all you've got is a plain old snorkel, and despite your obvious bear enthusiasm, you can only hold your grisly breath for so long before you run out of air. So you've got to wait until you find an oxygen tank. So I thought that was really well done. The upgrades aren't too far apart, and it didn't take me long to get into the swing of things and to just get to a nice rhythm of finding this or wandering into this area, realizing I'm not supposed to be there just yet, and going off into another zone. So that was pretty well done. And I really dig the sort of damage-death system in the game, where rather than sort of like a static health bar, they did a nice job of incorporating that sort of situational-based health that you see in a lot of first-person shooters, where if you get your butt kicked quite a bit, you just wander off for a little bit and you'll eventually sort of heal it off and so forth. And in order to illustrate how much you've gotten your butt kicked, they have, rather than a health bear, as I just mentioned, a picture of your lovely bear face in greater detail. And it starts out as a very lovely, happy, energetic, enthusiastic bear, and as you get pummeled, your face starts to take on the look of someone who's just been in a street yard fight with a bully. Come out on top, but a little bit worse for wear. But if you die, not to worry, you just go back to the spawn area as a happy little bear ghost and embody yet another strong, grisly, destructive bear hairy body thingy. The one bug that I did find in the game that made it sort of kind of funky at first was that if you die before you get too many upgrades, you can use your bear attack ability while dead as you're going through the animation to respawn, and your bear body will not be where your ghost expects it to be, which will prevent you from being able to respawn. The solution, of course, is to simply drown your new bear body in the water, and then your ghost will inhabit the next bear body that becomes available. Just don't pay any attention to the fact that there is another bear ghost that you're looking at that doesn't have a body of its own, that is some sort of weird clone of yourself, bringing up all sorts of weird existential questions. But otherwise, this is a game that really makes me think of just all the great platformer games that I've played on Game Boy or Game Boy Advanced or any number of emulators, so very nice job, Mr. Ryland and whoever you worked with on this jam entry. It's a very nice game, and I hope you build this into a full-fledged platformer game that you release somewhere like Steam. Otherwise, this has been a really awesome group of games. They've all got a really nice group of game mechanics behind them, even if they might need a little bit of refinement or they confuse me to some degree and I couldn't figure them out. And I hope all of you guys keep on making really awesome games in the future. I'm going to definitely be making a couple more videos coming up this weekend. Definitely one more for just random showcases and games that I've been shared. So if you didn't see your game up in this batch and you shared it with me, never fear, I am still going to make some more. And I'm also going to do a finale video where I showcase and talk about the games that ended up winning your praise and all of the fantastic prizes that come with being a well-known game maker from the Ludum Dare. Not so much in the fiscal monetary thing immediately, but hey, it's great for the portfolio and might even net you a job. So I have, of course, been Larry the Chupacabra. Thank you for joining me for the Ludum Dare Showcase number 3, and I will catch you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and maybe share these videos with your friends. Ta-ta!